7 years? And you never said a single word? Alicia, look at me. Did you really think I wouldn't want to know about them? The question was an open wound, torn open in the heart of Chicago's elite. James, the architect of control, felt the foundation of his life crumbling. He had built skyscrapers to touch the clouds, but he had let his true legacy slip through his fingers without even knowing. His gaze dropped from Alicia's guarded face to the 3 children at her side. 3 undeniable truths with his own blue eyes, staring back at him with a mix of innocence and confusion. And as if his world wasn't already tilting on its axis, another man he didn't know stepped forward, a silent protector beside Alicia, making it clear that James was confronting not just a past he'd abandoned, but a present in which he had no place. Whenever you're watching, and wherever you are in the world, let us know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss how this unfolds, and tell us, based on this beginning, what do you rate this story on a scale of 1 to 10? The Chicago skyline burned amber against the October dusk, a jagged silhouette of glass and steel that James Whitaker had long claimed as his kingdom. From the 60th floor of Whitaker Design's sleek headquarters, the architect stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, hands clasped behind his back. The city pulsed below, alive with ambition, yet a hollow ache gnawed at his chest, untouched by the empire he'd built. His tailored navy suit was immaculate, a perfect mask for the man who crafted iconic skyscrapers, but couldn't fill the void within. The office was a study in minimalism, polished hardwood, a single senator's handshake framed on the wall, no trace of warmth. He'd designed it that way, brick by calculated brick, after a marriage that crumbled under his relentless drive. A soft knock broke the silence. Margaret Thompson, his assistant of 15 years, stepped in, her graying hair in a neat bun. She held a cream-colored envelope, her expression unusually hesitant. "This arrived by courier, Mr. Whitaker, from Vance and Dawson Law Firm, marked personal." The name Dawson hit like a rogue wave. Alicia. His throat tightened, the room tilting for a moment. He hadn't heard her name in years, hadn't allowed himself to think of her radiant smile, her fierce spirit that once felt like home. "Leave it on the desk," he said, voice clipped, betraying none of the storm inside. Margaret hesitated, sensing the weight of the moment. "It's urgent, sir. They insisted you see it tonight." He waved her off. "The gala awaits, Margaret. I'll deal with it later." She set the envelope down, its stark presence a blemish on the polished desk, and left quietly. James stared at it, pulse quickening. Alicia Dawson, now a lawyer? Whispers in Chicago's elite circles had mentioned her work in civil rights, fierce and principled. Why reach out after 7 years of silence? Their divorce was final, bridges burned. He'd changed his number, his address, his life, erecting walls to keep the past at bay. Yet here it was, breaching his defenses in a single envelope. His fingers hovered over it, torn between, tearing it open and tossing it into the shredder. Memories flickered. Alicia's laughter in their cramped Rogers Park apartment, her coffee mugs warming his late-night coding sessions, their fights growing from whispers to shouts as his dreams outgrew hers. "I can't compete with your obsession, James," she'd said, voice breaking, the night she left. He'd let her go, too proud to chase her, too blind to see the cost. The clock chimed 6:30 p.m., snapping him back. The charity auction at the Art Institute demanded his presence, a benevolent billionaire securing headlines and donations. He shoved the envelope into his briefcase as if burying it could bury the past and headed out. In the chauffeured Bentley, soft jazz played, a cruel echo of nights he and Alicia danced in their tiny kitchen. He closed his eyes, trying to focus on the gala. Bids, speeches, the usual dance of influence. But his mind drifted to the envelope, to the woman who'd once been his everything. The Art Institute shimmered under a canopy of stars, its grand hall a kaleidoscope of wealth and ambition. Chandeliers cast golden light over tuxedos and sequined gowns. A jazz quartet weaving sultry notes through the chatter. James glided through the crowd, his trademark smile a practiced mask. He nodded at a senator's anecdote, sipped champagne, but the briefcase in his hand felt heavier than it should. The unopened letter burned like a silent specter. Seeking air, he leaned against a marble column near windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. The city pulsed below, oblivious to the crack forming in his curated world. Then a familiar melody, a Billie Holiday standard Alicia used to hum, drew his gaze across the room. His breath caught. There she was, seated at a table near the hall's edge, her presence a beacon in a sea of strangers. Alicia Dawson, radiant in a sapphire gown, her long wavy hair cascading over her shoulders. She was as breathtaking as the day they met, her grace anchoring his restless heart. But it wasn't just Alicia. Beside her sat 3 children, identical triplets, no older than 6, in matching navy dresses and a tiny blazer. Their skin, a warm tan, glowed like their mother's, but their sharp cheekbones and piercing blue eyes stopped his heart. It was like staring into a mirror. "They have my eyes," James whispered, the words escaping before he could stop them, his voice trembling with a truth he wasn't ready to name. The room spun, the chatter fading to a dull roar. He crossed the hall, drawn by an invisible thread, his polished facade crumbling with each step. Alicia looked up, her laughter with the children fading to a weary mask. "James," she said, her voice cool but steady, a fortress against their past. The triplets peered at him, Luna clutching a sketch pad, smudged with charcoal, Sewell fidgeting with a napkin, eyes darting with curiosity, Stella holding Alicia's hand, her gaze gentle but wary. "Are they—" James started, his voice faltering, drowned by his pulse. Alicia stood, guiding the children toward a dessert table, her posture a silent command to stay back. But he followed, desperate. "Allie, please," he said near a display of auction items, voice low to avoid the children's ears. "We need to talk." Her eyes, sharp and guarded, met his. "Not here, not now." Julian Vance, a tall man in a navy suit, appeared beside her, his hand resting lightly on her arm. His gray eyes locked onto James with unspoken warning. "Alicia, the auction's starting," Julian said, his tone polite but firm. James's chest tightened, the weight of 7 years crashing down. He nodded, stepping back, the briefcase forgotten on a chair. As Alicia walked away with the triplets, James watched Luna sketch a star, Sewell point at a model skyscraper, and Stella glance back at him, her blue eyes a haunting echo of his own. The jazz quartet played on, but the melody couldn't drown out the truth. Those children were his, and the life he'd built, perfect, cold, controlled, was unraveling under the weight of a single night. The image of those blue-eyed triplets haunted James Whitaker through a sleepless night. Their faces, Luna's charcoal-smudged fingers, Sewell's restless curiosity, Stella's gentle grip on Alicia's hand, etched into his mind like an unfinished blueprint. The Gala's jazz lingered, a mocking echo of a life he'd left behind. By dawn, the unopened envelope from Vance and Dawson Law Firm sat on his desk, no longer avoidable. He tore it open, hands unsteady, revealing a single sheet, a handwritten note from Alicia. "We need to talk. 9 a.m., my office. Don't be late." No warmth, no explanation, just her elegant script cutting through 7 years of silence. His chest tightened. What did she want? An apology, a reckoning, or something more? The Chicago morning was gray, mist cloaking the city's steel spires. As James stepped from his Bentley onto the cracked sidewalk outside Vance and Dawson's modest Bronzeville office. The building, a repurposed brownstone, stood in stark contrast to his sleek headquarters. Inside, a receptionist with gold-beaded braids led him to a small room where Alicia waited behind a cluttered desk, her posture rigid, a fortress of resolve. She wore a tailored blazer, her long wavy hair loosely framing her face, but her eyes were all business, sharp and unyielding. "Sit," she said, voice cool as the autumn air. James complied, the chair creaking under him, the weight of her gaze heavier than the city itself. "I saw them," he began, voice low, "at the gala. They're mine, aren't they?" Alicia's fingers tightened around a pen, her silence a blade. "You don't get to waltz in and demand answers, James. You lost that right when you shut me out." Her words landed like a blow, each syllable laced with years of buried pain. He leaned forward, desperate. "Alicia, I need to know. Please," she exhaled, her mask slipping just enough to reveal a flicker of exhaustion. "Luna, Saul, Stella, they're yours, born 6 months after you vanished. I called, wrote, stood outside your damn office until security sent me away. You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with us." The truth hit harder than he expected, a collapsing scaffold in his carefully built world. He remembered those months, drowning in deadlines, ordering his team to filter out anything personal to shield himself from her absence. "I didn't know," he said, the words hollow even to his ears. Alicia's eyes flashed. "I called for weeks. I wrote until my hand cramped. You changed your number, your email, your life. I got the message." She set the pen down, her voice steady but cutting. "I raised them, loved them, protected them. They're mine, James. If you want to be part of their lives, it's not about biology. It's about showing up." He opened his mouth, but no words came. His designs meant for renewal were listed as the project's backbone, but altered. Shoddy materials, unsafe layouts. The realization hit like a collapsing beam. Someone had bastardized his work to cut costs, endangering lives. And Alicia was fighting to stop it. He needed to see her, to understand, but her rejection stung. Instead, he turned to the one place he knew he'd find resistance. The Whitaker estate in Evanston loomed like a monument to legacy, its manicured lawns and stone columns a stark contrast to Bronzeville's grit. Evelyn and Charles Whitaker sat in the drawing room, their postures as rigid as the antique furniture. "James, this is reckless," Evelyn said, her voice clipped, pearls glinting at her throat. "Chasing after that woman again? You have a reputation to protect." Charles, leaning on his cane, added, "Your designs built this family's name. Don't throw it away for a past you can't change." James's jaw tightened. "Did you know about her? About the children?" Their silence was deafening, Evelyn's eyes darting away, Charles gripping his cane harder. "We did what was best for you," Evelyn finally said. "She wasn't suitable." The words ignited a buried rage. You pushed her out, James said, voice low but fierce. You pushed me to abandon her. Before he could press further, his phone buzzed, a news alert. A fire had broken out at a Southside community center tied to Alicia's lawsuit. No injuries, but a clear message. His stomach churned. Was this the regret the text warned of? He left his parents' estate, their protests fading behind him, and drove to his office. There, a new shock awaited. A leaked blueprint, one of his originals, was circulating online, falsely stamped with his approval for Thorne Enterprises project. The alterations were blatant: narrowed support beams, cheap materials. His name, his legacy was being dragged through the mud. James stood at his office window, the Chicago skyline no longer a kingdom but a battlefield. The triplets' faces flashed in his mind: Luna's quiet sketches, Soul's endless questions, Stella's fragile trust. Alicia's fight wasn't just her own. It was tied to his past, his mistakes. The anonymous threat, the fire, the leaked blueprint. They weren't coincidences. Someone likely tied to Thorne Enterprises wanted to keep him and Alicia apart to protect their profits at the cost of lives. He grabbed his coat, resolve hardening. He'd built his life on control, but now cracks were spreading through his fortress. To save Alicia, the children, and his own soul, he'd have to tear it down himself. The Chicago skyline loomed like a chessboard of power, its towers cast in long shadows over James Whitaker's resolve. The fire at the Southside Community Center, coupled with the leaked blueprint falsely bearing his name, had turned his world into a battlefield. He stood in his office at Whitaker Design, the city's lights glinting through the window, but his mind was on Alicia and the triplets, Luna's quiet sketches, Soul's endless curiosity, Stella's fragile trust. The anonymous threat from last night, "Stay away from Dawson or you'll regret it," now felt like a prelude to the chaos unfolding. Someone was weaving a web to trap them both, and James was determined to cut through it. He dove into his firm's archives, pulling records of old urban renewal projects. The blueprints, once symbols of his ambition, now bore the taint of misuse. Thorne Enterprises, led by Victor Thorne, had resurrected his designs, twisting them into cost-cutting schemes that endangered Southside families. James's stomach churned as he traced altered lines, thinner beams, substandard materials. His work, meant to uplift, was now a weapon. Worse, the community center fire suggested Thorne's reach extended beyond paperwork. James needed answers, and that meant facing Alicia again, despite her rejection. He drove to Bronzeville, parking outside Vance and Dawson law firm. The brick building buzzed with purpose, a stark contrast to his sterile office. Inside, Alicia was in a meeting, but a receptionist led him to a waiting area. There, on a bulletin board, children's drawings caught his eye: stars and houses in crayon, one signed Luna. His chest tightened. He imagined Stella, her hand clutching Alicia's, struggling to breathe in a city poisoned by greed. The thought propelled him to action. When Alicia emerged, her posture was guarded, but her eyes flickered with exhaustion. "James, I told you to stay away," she said, voice low, to avoid nearby staff. "I'm here to help," he replied, holding up a folder of his findings. "Your lawsuit is tied to my designs. Someone's using them to hurt people." Alicia hesitated, her fingers brushing a star-shaped pendant at her neck. "You don't get to play hero now," she said, but her tone softened as she scanned the documents. "Thorne Enterprises. I've been fighting them for months. She revealed Victor Thorne's history, shady deals, displaced families, and whispers of intimidation. James's jaw clenched. I think he's behind the threats, the fire too. Before she could respond, a commotion outside interrupted. A protester from the community, furious about the fire, demanding answers. Alicia excused herself, but not before James caught a glimpse of her resolve, a fire matching his own. Back at his office, James enlisted Margaret's help to dig deeper. She cross-referenced Thorne's contracts, uncovering a connection to Charles Whitaker, his father. Years ago, Charles had brokered deals with Thorne, profiting from urban projects that skirted regulations. The revelation stung. His parents' interference in his marriage wasn't just prejudice, it was tied to Thorne's schemes. Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. Alicia's been targeted since she took on this fight. If you're serious about helping, start with the truth. James nodded, guilt mingling with determination. He sent Alicia an email offering to fund her lawsuit and Stella's medical care, hoping to prove his sincerity. That evening, at a Lincoln Park playground, James watched from a distance as Alicia pushed Stella on a swing, Luna sketching nearby, Sewell dismantling a toy car. Stella's cough, faint but persistent, twisted his heart. He approached, ignoring Alicia's wary glance. I found proof, he said, handing her a USB drive with altered blueprints. Thorne's using my designs to cut corners. It might be why Stella's sick, the construction dust, the pollution. Alicia's eyes widened, but her voice stayed sharp. This doesn't make you their father, James. It's a start, but it's not enough. She turned away, guiding the triplets to a picnic table, leaving him with the weight of her words. As James drove home, his phone buzzed. A new message. You were warned. Stop digging. His grip tightened on the wheel. Thorne's shadow loomed larger, a web entangling his past and present. He thought of his parents, their cold insistence on legacy, and the triplets, their innocent faces a call to action. Charles's involvement with Thorne suggested a deeper betrayal, one that had cost him Alicia years ago. The city's skyline, once his pride, now felt like a cage. He couldn't undo the past, but he could fight for the future, for Luna's art, Soul's questions, Stella's health. The web was tightening, but James was ready to break free, even if it meant confronting the man who'd orchestrated his ruin. The Chicago wind howled through the city's canyons, a restless echo of the storm brewing in James Whitaker's heart. The latest anonymous threat, you were warned, stop digging, had followed him from the Lincoln Park playground, where Stella's faint cough and Alicia's guarded rejection had cut deeper than any blueprint's betrayal. Victor Thorne's shadow loomed larger, his corrupted designs tainting James's legacy and worse, threatening the triplets' safety. The USB drive James had given Alicia, loaded with proof of Thorne's altered blueprints, was a first step, but her words lingered. It's a start, but it's not enough. He stood in his office at Whitaker Design, staring at the skyline, no longer a kingdom, but a maze of secrets. He had to do more for Luna's quiet sketches, for Soul's endless questions, for Stella's fragile health. A call shattered his thoughts. Alicia's voice, usually steady, trembled on the line. James, it's Stella. She's in the hospital. It's bad. His heart lurched. He grabbed his keys, barking to Margaret, cancel everything, family emergency. The drive through Chicago's icy streets was a blur, his mind racing with images of Stella's small hand in Alicia's, her cough now a siren of regret. At Lurie Children's Hospital, he found Alicia in the emergency room, her star-shaped pendant glinting under harsh lights. She sat beside Stella, who clutched a puzzle book, eyes red from crying. "Asthma attack," Alicia said, voice tight. "The pollution from Thorne's construction sites. It's making her worse." James knelt beside them, his hand hovering, unsure. "I'm here, Allie," he said, "for her, for all of them." Alicia's gaze softened, but only slightly, her exhaustion a wall he couldn't yet breach. In the hospital corridor, James used his contacts to ensure Stella received top care, his influence a tool he wielded with newfound purpose. Back in the waiting room, he showed Alicia more evidence, air quality reports linking Thorne's sites to health risks in the South Side, including asthma triggers. "This isn't just about my designs," he said, voice low. "Thorne's cutting corners to line his pockets, and it's hurting our daughter." The word "our" slipped out, and Alicia's eyes flickered, a mix of pain and surprise. She didn't respond, but handed him a file, her own research on Thorne's shell companies, tied to payoffs and intimidation. Their shared anger forged a fragile bridge, one James vowed not to break. Julian Vance arrived, his presence a quiet anchor. He studied James, then nodded to Alicia. "He's right about the pollution. We've got witnesses, but we need more to nail Thorne." James seized the moment. "I can get you blueprints, permits, anything to prove he's rigging the system." Julian hesitated, his loyalty to Alicia clear, but her nod signaled a shift. "We work together," she said, voice firm, "but this is for the community, not you." The alliance was uneasy, born of necessity, but James felt a spark of hope. They agreed to meet at Vance and Dawson to strategize, pooling James's architectural expertise with their legal acumen. Before leaving, James sat with Stella, now stable but pale, her puzzle book open to a half-solved maze. "Want help?" he asked, voice soft. She nodded, shy but curious, and they traced lines together, her small finger guiding his. Luna and Sewell, waiting nearby, watched. Luna sketching a hospital room, Sewell fidgeting with a toy gear. Alicia observed, her expression unreadable but softer. The moment was fleeting, shattered by a call from Margaret. "James, your father's here. He's asking about Thorne." James's jaw tightened. Charles Whitaker's past dealings with Thorne, revealed in their last confrontation, were a wound still raw. At Whitaker Design, Charles waited in the conference room, his cane tapping impatiently. "You're digging into dangerous territory," he said, voice gruff. "Thorne's not just a businessman, he's ruthless." James leaned forward, anger flaring. "Did you know he was using my designs to hurt people, that he pushed Alicia out of my life?" Charles's silence was an admission, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I thought I was protecting you," he murmured. "I was wrong." The confession, though late, cracked open a door to redemption. Charles offered old contracts, evidence of Thorne's early schemes, a gesture James accepted warily. As night fell, James stood alone in his office, the city's lights a reminder of the stakes. The hospital scene replayed, Stella's trust, Alicia's reluctant alliance, Julian's cautious nod. Thorne's web was tightening, but so was James's resolve. He thought of Luna's stars, Soul's gears, Stella's maze. His fortress of ambition was crumbling, but in its place he was building something new, a foundation of trust, fragile but real. Thorne's next move was coming, and James would be ready, not just for Alicia or the triplets, but for the man he was becoming. The Chicago skyline flickered under a bruised sky, its steel spires indifferent to the storm brewing in James Whitaker's heart. Stella's hospital bed, her small hand clutching a puzzle book, had cemented his resolve. The uneasy alliance with Alicia and Julian, forged in the sterile glow of the emergency room, was a lifeline. But Victor Thorne's shadow loomed larger, his threats now a tangible danger. Charles's confession, his old deals with Thorne, had cracked open a painful truth. The man who'd shaped James's ambition had also torn him from Alicia. Now, armed with blueprints, air quality reports, and Charles's contracts, James was ready to face the enemy threatening his children and the woman he'd never stopped loving. At Vance and Dawson's Bronzeville office, the air buzzed with purpose. James spread altered blueprints across a conference table, his architect's eye catching every flaw. Shoddy beams, unsafe layouts. Alicia, her star pendant glinting as she leaned over witness statements, outlined Thorne's pattern of intimidation, displaced families, silenced protesters. Julian pacing added details from community leaders, their voices trembling with fear but resolute. "We've got enough for a lawsuit," Alicia said, her voice steady despite the weight of Stella's recent scare. "But Thorne's not just a businessman, he's dangerous." James met her gaze, a silent vow passing between them. "Then we take the fight to him," he said, "where he can't hide." Their plan took shape. James would analyze Thorne's construction site in Inglewood, a sprawling skeleton of concrete and steel where his corrupted designs were being built. Alicia and Julian would secure affidavits from displaced residents, linking Thorne's projects to health crises like Stella's asthma. But danger struck first. Margaret called, voice tight. "Someone tried to access your office server last night. They were looking for the Inglewood files." James's pulse quickened. Thorne was closing in. Then a chilling text arrived. "Leave the girl alone or she won't breathe again." The words, aimed at Stella, turned his blood to ice. He shared the message with Alicia, who gripped the table, her knuckles whitening. "He's crossed a line," she whispered, fury masking her fear. The Inglewood site was a maze of cranes and half-built towers, the air thick with dust that stung James's lungs. He walked the perimeter with Alicia and Julian, blueprints in hand pointing out structural flaws that could collapse under stress. The site manager, a wiry man with nervous eyes, fled when questioned, confirming their suspicions. As dusk fell, Victor Thorne emerged from a trailer, his presence a cold blade in the fading light. "Whitaker," he said, voice smooth but venomous. "You're meddling in things you don't understand." James stepped forward, unwavering. "I understand you're using my designs to destroy lives, including my daughter's." Thorne's smile was a predator's, his hand brushing a gold ring. "Walk away, or your little family reunion ends badly." Alicia's voice cut through, sharp as steel. "We have proof, Thorne. Your permits, your payoffs, your pollution. It's over." Thorne's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, a shout echoed. A worker had spotted a tampered scaffold rigged to collapse. James reacted instinctively, pulling Alicia from the path of falling debris, his heart pounding as dust clouded the air. Julian shielded them, shouting for the workers to clear out. Thorne vanished into the chaos, but not before hissing, "You'll pay for this." The near miss was no accident, a deliberate warning. As they regrouped at a safe distance, sirens wailed, police arriving to secure the site. James's phone buzzed. Evelyn, his mother, her voice shaky. "We're at the hospital with Charles. We heard about Stella and Thorne. Against his expectations, they'd come to support Alicia, driven by guilt over their past. At Lurie Children's, James found them in the waiting room, Evelyn clutching Luna's latest sketch, a starlit family. Charles, leaning on his cane, handed James a folder. "More contracts," he said, voice heavy. "Thorne used me to get to you years ago. I'm sorry." Evelyn touched Alicia's shoulder, a tentative gesture. "We were wrong about you," she said. "Those children, they're ours too." The hospital's hum faded as James sat with Stella, now resting, her puzzle book open. Luna and Sewell joined, Sewell showing off a toy crane, Luna offering a shy smile. Alicia watched, her guard lowering just enough for James to see hope. The scaffold incident, Charles's evidence, and the community's affidavits formed a noose around Thorne. The fight wasn't over, but the concrete foundation of Thorne's empire was cracking, just as James's own walls were falling. He looked at Alicia, her strength a beacon, and knew he'd fight beside her, not just for justice, but for the family he was reclaiming, one fragile step at a time. The Englewood construction site's dust still clung to James Whitaker's jacket, a gritty reminder of the scaffold's near collapse and Victor Thorne's venomous threat. Chicago's skyline, once a testament to his triumphs, now loomed as a battleground where his past mistakes and newfound family collided. The hospital reunion with Evelyn and Charles, their guilt-laden support, had cracked open a door to redemption, but it was Alicia's steady resolve and the triplets' innocent trust, Luna's sketches, Saul's toy crane, Stella's puzzle, that anchored his purpose. Thorne's empire was teetering, and James, alongside Alicia and Julian, was ready to bring it down. At Vance and Dawson's Bronzeville office, the air thrummed with urgency. Alicia, her star pendant catching the lamplight, presented affidavits from displaced Southside families, their stories of loss weaving a damning case. Julian, his sleeves rolled up, cross-referenced James's blueprints with city permits, exposing Thorne's forged approvals. James laid out his own evidence, altered designs, air quality reports linking construction pollution to Stella's asthma. "We've got him," Julian said, his usual wariness toward James softened by their shared goal. A press conference was scheduled, backed by community leaders to expose Thorne's crimes. Hours later, the news broke. Thorne was arrested, his project halted, the Southside community spared. Alicia's victory was a beacon, but her eyes meeting James's held a question. What now? The win was bittersweet. James returned to Lurie Children's Hospital where Stella was recovering, her breathing steadier. Alicia sat by her side, reading a story, while Luna doodled stars and Sol built a tower from hospital blocks. James hesitated at the door, then stepped in, offering a small model skyscraper he'd crafted for Sol. The boy's eyes lit up, his fingers tracing the tiny beams. "It's like yours," Sol said, a shy grin breaking through. Luna handed James a sketch, a family under a starry sky, her strokes tentative but bold. Stella, clutching her puzzle book, whispered, "Stay." James' throat tightened. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised, his voice raw. Alicia watched, her guard softening, a fragile trust taking root. The next day at a quiet Bronzeville cafe, James and Alicia met alone, the city's hum a distant backdrop. "I'm sorry, Allie," he said, the words heavy with years of regret, "for leaving, for ignoring you, for letting my parents drive us apart." Alicia stirred her coffee, her silence a weight. "I tried to tell you about the triplets," she said finally. I stood outside your office once, pregnant, hoping you'd see me. Your security sent me away. The confession pierced him, sharper than any threat. I didn't know, he said, voice breaking. But I'm here now. Let me prove it. Alicia's eyes searched his, then softened. It's not about me anymore. It's about them. Luna, Sewell, Stella. She paused, then added, Start small, James. Be there. He took her words to heart. Over weeks, James wove himself into the triplets' lives, not as a father claiming rights, but as a man earning trust. He joined Luna at an art class, marveling as she painted a cityscape with fearless strokes. With Saul, he built a model bridge in his office, laughing as the boy debated beam angles. For Stella, he researched air purifiers, ensuring her room was a haven. Alicia watched, her resistance thawing with each quiet moment. One evening at her modest apartment, they shared pizza, the triplets giggling as Sewell flicked sauce at Luna. Alicia's laughter, rare and radiant, warmed James more than any skyscraper's shadow. The turning point came at the Whitaker estate. Evelyn, her pearls replaced by a simple scarf, welcomed Alicia and the triplets. I was wrong, she said, voice trembling, as she handed Luna a sketchbook from her own youth. Charles, his cane set aside, knelt to show Sewell a vintage model train. We want to know our grandchildren, he said, eyes meeting Alicia's. The apology, though late, was a cornerstone laid. James seized the moment, revealing a new project, a home he'd designed in Wicker Park, with a studio for Luna, a workshop for Sewell, and a sunlit room for Stella's health. It's for all of you, he told Alicia, handing her the blueprints. A place to start over, together. Her fingers traced the plans, a tear falling. I'll think about it, she said, her voice a whisper of possibility. Chicago's skyline glowed under a crescent moon as James stood in his office, the city no longer a battlefield, but a canvas. Thorne's downfall had cleared a path, but it was the triplets' laughter, Alicia's tentative trust, and his parents' change that built a new foundation. The house in Wicker Park wasn't just concrete and glass. It was a promise, fragile but enduring. As he sketched a star, echoing Luna's art, James knew the hardest work lay ahead. Not building towers, but a family, brick by careful brick. The Chicago skyline shimmered under a late autumn sunset, its golden hues softening the sharp edges of James Whitaker's once cold empire. Victor Thorne's arrest had dismantled a web of corruption, freeing the South Side from his predatory projects. But it was the fragile trust budding between James, Alicia, and their triplets, Luna, Sewell, and Stella, that felt like the true victory. The Wicker Park house, its blueprints a promise of a shared future, had stirred something in Alicia, her tear-streaked nod a crack in the wall she'd built. Evelyn and Charles's apologies, coupled with their tentative embrace of the grandchildren, had laid a cornerstone for healing. Now, as James stood in the half-finished home, its beams rising like hope, he knew the real work was just beginning. The Wicker Park house buzzed with life, its walls still raw but alive with possibility. Alicia moved through the open-plan living room, her star pendant catching the light as she unpacked a box of books. Luna, perched on a stool, sketched a mural of stars on a blank wall, her charcoal strokes bold yet delicate. Sewell, sprawled on the floor, assembled a model bridge with James, debating angles with a seriousness that made them both laugh. Stella, her breathing steadier, sat in a sunlit corner, arranging puzzle pieces into a cityscape. It's home, she said softly, her voice a quiet gift. James met Alicia's eyes across the room, her smile fleeting but warm, a silent acknowledgement of their new beginning. Weeks earlier at Vance and Dawson's office, James had proposed a bold idea to Alicia and Julian, a foundation in the triplets' names to support Southside children through education and safe spaces. Julian, his initial wariness replaced by respect, brought legal expertise, while James offered his architectural skills to design community centers, buildings that served, not displaced. Alicia, her resolve as fierce as ever, spearheaded outreach, ensuring families had a voice. They named it the Luna, Saul, and Stella Foundation. Its first project, a library in Inglewood, where Thorne's cranes once loomed. At the groundbreaking, James watched Alicia speak to a crowd, her words igniting hope. "This is for our kids," she said, glancing at the triplets, who clapped from the front row. James felt a surge of pride, not for his designs, but for the woman he was learning to love again. The triplets' 7th birthday arrived, a crisp November day that filled the Wicker Park house with laughter. Evelyn, her usual pearls swapped for a knit sweater, helped Luna hang star-shaped lanterns, her hands trembling with newfound warmth. Charles, his cane propped against a wall, showed Sewell how to carve a wooden boat, their chuckles blending with the party's hum. Alicia orchestrated the chaos, setting out a cake adorned with 3 stars, one for each child. As the candles flickered, Luna presented James with a sketch, a family under a starry sky, their faces unmistakable. Sewell handed him a wobbly model tower, proclaiming, "It's stronger than yours." Stella, her eyes bright, climbed into his lap and whispered, "Beau," the word a bridge across years of absence. James's chest tightened, tears blurring the room. Alicia's hand brushed his, a quiet anchor. Later on the rooftop terrace, James and Alicia stood under the Chicago sky, the city's lights a tapestry of dreams rebuilt. The triplets' laughter drifted from below, mingling with Evelyn's soft humming and Charles's gruff storytelling. "You've changed," Alicia said, her voice soft but steady. "But it's still a long road." James nodded, tracing the skyline with his gaze. "I know. I'm not building towers anymore, not the kind that block out the stars." He gestured to the house, its open windows spilling light. "This is my legacy now. You, them, us." Alicia's fingers tightened around her pendant, her eyes searching his. "We'll build it together," she said, not a promise, but a possibility. The Luna, Soul, and Stella Foundation grew, its library opening to cheers from the community. James designed it with wide windows, like the ones Luna loved, in sturdy beams, like Soul's models. Stella's corner, filled with books and clean air, was a haven. Alicia led workshops there, her passion a beacon for families. Julian, now a friend, joked about keeping James in line, his laughter a testament to their unlikely bond. As James watched the triplets play in the library's garden, Luna sketching, Soul building, Stella reading, he felt the weight of his old fortress lift. Chicago's skyline, once a symbol of ambition, was now a canvas for connection. The stars emerged, faint but steady, as James and Alicia stood on the rooftop again, the city alive below. "The greatest architecture," he said, his voice low, "is a family built on love and forgiveness." Alicia leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his, and for the first time in years, the future felt like a blueprint they could draw together. One line, one star, one fragile, beautiful step at a time. As the Chicago stars fade into dawn, James and Alicia's journey reminds us that the greatest blueprints are those we draw with love, forgiveness, and courage. What did their story stir in you? Did Luna's sketches, Soul's towers, or Stella's quiet trust touch your heart? Share your thoughts, your hopes, your own stories of rebuilding. We'd love to hear them. Thank you for walking this path with us, through every crack and cornerstone. Until we meet again under a new sky, keep sketching your own legacy, one brave step at a time.